To be honest, I'm not sure if anything I just said made any sense at all. Hey guys, welcome back to the DrCliffAuD vlog. This is vlog number 148. I hope you guys had a fantastic Thanksgiving. I'm actually recording this the day before Thanksgiving. We've got some family coming into town, so I didn't want to record this later in the week so I can spend as much time with family as possible while they're in town. But if you could do me a huge favor, click that like button if you had a good Thanksgiving. I would really appreciate it. That helps out my channel a lot. If you want to see more vlogs, of course, make sure that you hit that subscribe button with notification bell so you get noticed every single time I post a new one each week. Now, a couple things. This week was a pretty short week inside of the clinic, but action-packed week. A lot of different things were going on from a treatment standpoint. We, of course, did not do our not our vlog. This is the vlog. We did not do our Dr. Cliff Show podcast, our live podcast show this week because day before Thanksgiving just wasn't a good day to kind of fit it in. And most people probably wouldn't even watch it because you're probably getting ready for friends and family as well. But today I really want to talk about this idea of questions that I get. Not an idea of questions, but a particular question that I got this past week on my channel. And I thought it was a really good one. Normally, I get a lot of questions about like, what's the best hearing aid? And I go into typically my normal diatribe of, well, it depends on a lot of different things. But this one was just a little bit different. And it's still alluding to this idea of what the best hearing aid is. But Ed Thomason asked about a week ago, what is the best hearing aid for both speech and music? Also best one for least occlusion effect. Normally, I don't like answering these questions that allude to that there's a best hearing aid for something, but this one had it kind of broken down into different segments of speech, music, and occlusion effect, so I figured I could kind of weigh in on this a little bit and let you guys know where I'm coming from in terms of how I would break this down with the patient inside of the clinic. So if they came in and speech intelligibility and music appreciation and reduction of occlusion effect were priorities for this individual, I would actually go in and start breaking all of these down based on the hearing loss that someone has. Now, because I don't know Ed's hearing loss, I don't know what his thresholds are, I don't know what his speech intelligibility scores are, I don't know what his, well, I wouldn't really care about background noise a whole lot for these particular situations, but there's just a lot of information that I would need to be able to speak specifically of which hearing aid would be best for this individual. But I will start and try to kind of make some generalizations here to help you guys understand where I'm coming from with this. So when it comes to speech intelligibility, if you're trying to optimize that, pretty much all of the major hearing aid manufacturers have terrific hearing aids for optimal speech intelligibility. In fact, that's what most hearing aids are specifically designed for. And the thing that you're looking for is a hearing aid that can be customized to someone's hearing loss prescription really well. And again, that's pretty much all of them. Any of the major brands that are out there give us enough customizations to be able to match a hearing loss prescriptive target, which is our goal when we're trying to optimize speech intelligibility. Because when you're matching to a prescriptive target, what you're trying to do is restore as much missing speech information that is caused by the hearing loss as humanly possible. Now, someone might have a word recognition score that is 100%. What that means is that their prognosis for being able to understand speech in a quiet environment is really, really high. If you can get them back the missing speech information using a hearing aid, using the best hearing aid, then they should be able to understand speech at a very high level of accuracy. However, if someone has really poor word recognition scores, you could have the best hearing aid in the world programmed perfectly, and you will still not be able to achieve a high level of speech clarity. But getting perfect clarity in speech is never the goal. The goal is to optimize someone's ability to understand speech at the highest level possible for them. So you have two totally different individuals, same level of hearing loss. One of them might have a 100% speech intelligibility score. The other one might have a 50% speech intelligibility score. My goal is to get the person with 100 to 100. My goal to get the person with 50 is to get them to 50 and a percent speech understanding. So hopefully that helps you understand where I'm coming from when we're looking specifically at speech intelligibility. Now, the way that a hearing aid is set up is very important as well. So certain hearing aid manufacturers do a better job of amplifying high frequencies using a rubber dome, and other manufacturers do a better job of amplifying sound with a custom ear mold with a particular vent size. So you just need to make sure that you're getting the proper one selected. I just posted a video this past week talking about dome selection versus ear mold selection, and that actually has more to do with your success with hearing treatment than the best hearing aid for speech. So you really need to look into that aspect of it. And then the other thing that I will say from a speech understanding perspective is that if you have a hearing care professional who doesn't work with a particular brand, then you do not want to go with that particular, with a different brand with them, because they're likely not going to be able to optimize it as well as someone who's very familiar with that particular brand. Now, there are a few exceptions to this. I mean, you know, if someone were to come in with a brand of hearing aid that I don't work with a whole lot and they're not having success with it, chances are I'm going to be able to optimize that hearing aid substantially better by running them through a best practice protocol to optimize the performance of those devices. But chances are here is that if you're looking for better speech intelligibility, you need to pretty much go with the recommended hearing aid of the hearing care professional based on their level of expertise with that device. And as long as they're following best practices, you will get a significant improvement in your speech intelligibility, at least up to whatever your word recognition score percentages are. So, boy, I talked a lot on that one. Maybe this is not a good thing for me to be answering questions here, because I'm going through things in my head. Like anytime that I hear someone's looking for a certain thing, I'm like, okay, what are the other variables that we have to look at here? And then that will lead me down this, like, I don't know, rabbit hole or wormhole to finding the exact right device for that particular individual based on my level of expertise. Now, when you start looking at music, things change a little bit. So from a music perspective, the number one thing that I look for is what is the input dynamic range of a particular hearing aid. You want as high of an input dynamic range as humanly possible, because music, when it's played, is usually played at a louder level. And if you have a hearing aid that cannot actually capture those higher levels of auditory information that are coming into the hearing aid, it ends up chopping it off. And then we have this saying called garbage in, garbage out. So if you can't get the full signal into the hearing aid, it doesn't matter what you're doing sound processing wise when you kick that signal or amplify it back into a person's ears, it's never going to sound very good. So having a high input dynamic range is very important. There's a couple of brands that do really good with this. Oticon's good at this, Resound's good at this, Widex is good at this. And then again, if you're going to someone who doesn't have any experience with Widex and you're like, I want a Widex hearing aid because I've heard that that one is really good for music, and the provider's like, well, I never work with Widex, you probably don't want to go with Widex. You want to go with a different brand that they're more comfortable with. But sometimes if you're trying to optimize for music, you're not necessarily focused on speech. Those are two completely different things. So you might need two different program settings for each one of those types of situations. I hope that makes sense, because you know, anytime that you're using a speech program to listen to music, oftentimes you're trying to scrub out anything that is not speech related and get rid of everything else. And then it makes music sound like garbage if you're using a speech program for that. So keep that in mind as well. A lot of good hearing aids for both speech and music that are out there. I just listed a couple here. Okay, so let's go on to the best one for least occlusion effect. Now, if you do not know what occlusion effect is when you have something inside of your ears, and you can do this yourself. You can take and plug your ears with your fingers, and then if you talk, what you're hearing is that your voice is being bone conducted through your jaw. It ends up in your ear canal, but it cannot escape out of your ear canal. So it's literally vibrating your eardrum inside of your ear canal, and it makes your own voice really boomy and loud to yourself. A lot of new hearing aid users get or experience this occlusion effect if they have occluding domes or occluding ear molds inside of their ear canals. And when I say occluding, I mean completely blocking off their ear canals. So when someone is looking to reduce occlusion effect, either you're going to want to go with an open dome, which means that the hearing aid has to be capable of amplifying the frequencies that you need without feedback using an open dome, or you're going to have to use a custom ear mold with a variable vent size. So I say variable vent size, meaning that certain individuals need more venting, certain individuals need less venting, depending on the prescription of their hearing loss and how much amplification they actually need. So when you start looking at reducing occlusion, it's not necessarily going with a particular hearing aid that reduces occlusion, it's how that hearing aid is set up to reduce the occlusion effect. And having more venting is better there, but you know, you usually experience occlusion effect when you have thresholds that are better than 50 decibels at 250 and 500 hertz. So if you have thresholds that are worse than 50 decibels at 250 and 500, then you don't really need to worry about a whole lot of venting. Any perceived increase in your own voice is due to amplification of your own voice going through the hearing aids. Now, there is a particular hearing aid out there that has something called own voice processing. These are Signia devices. So if you're trying to have a hearing aid that isn't going to amplify your voice as much, if that's what you're perceiving and not necessarily the occlusion effect, you can activate this feature at your hearing care professional's office where they will have you count out out loud certain numbers like 21, 22, 23, while you're training the hearing aid to recognize your voice. So anytime that you talk, it reduces the amplification given to your voice, so you don't perceive yourself as being as loud, but it doesn't affect anyone else's voice around you. So it's a really cool feature. The thing is that most people get used to the perception of their own voice when it's being amplified through the hearing aid. People do not get used to the occlusion effect, which is the sound of your own voice vibrating inside of your ear canal. So venting is the most important thing. And really when it comes down to is that, can you have a vent and still have a hearing aid that is capable of amplifying sound to your prescriptive levels? Because there's a trade-off there. If you end up increasing the venting so much that your voice can escape and you're like, hey, my voice sounds great, but then someone talks to you and like, I still can't understand what the heck that you're saying. That is not a worthwhile trade-off, okay? So I just gave probably 10 videos worth of information there in about 5 minutes. And I think the point that I really want to get across here is that this is really a good question. And it is a question that you guys should be asking your hearing care professional, but there is no easy way to answer it. It really depends on what your specific wants and needs are, of course, but also your audiogram and what we identify inside the clinic. Because if this individual, if Ed Thomason, if you were to come into my clinic or have a virtual consultation with me, you would ask me these same questions and I'd be like, well, it depends. Let's look and see what we're working with here. And then it's my job to educate the individual what I'm seeing. And so we can ultimately make the best decision together. That is called person-centered care. So follow best practices, which is great. I talk about it all the time on my channel. But I think that person-centered care is really what helps an individual understand, like, here's the considerations that are at play here. Sometimes you cannot achieve all of these things at the same time. So you have to identify what's the priority, what's the number one most important thing that you want to be able to do with your hearing aids. And if we can get you everything, that's great. But sometimes you cannot get everything, at least not everything perfect. So you can see why when someone asks me the question, what is the best hearing aid? I'm like, I have no clue. It really depends. That's why I need to have at least an hour to 2 hours working with someone to identify what their hearing loss is, to identify what their specific wants and needs are, and then I can go down this decision tree of all of these different hearing aid makes and models and brands and all of that I had to choose from to solve that particular problem. So I'm sorry to say that the answer from me might be completely different from an audiologist in a different state based on what they're used to working with in terms of technology-wise, and based off of what understanding they can help a patient come to on their own and identify their priorities. But again, I think that these are worthwhile discussions to have. It's just, I don't like being super abstract, because my video here, the answer that I gave, is just going to lead to more questions. And it's much easier if I know specifically what I'm working with so I can answer the question to have a definitive answer. And I don't know, if you guys like this type of me answering questions here on the vlog, I'm happy to have kind of like if you guys ask questions throughout the week, I pick out the one that I think is really good and answer it here during my vlog. So hopefully you guys liked today's video. I feel like I was all over the place in this video. If you got nothing out of this, I don't blame you. If the only thing that you did get out of it is that, like, wow, that sounds complex, well, then you need to see your hearing care professional. If everything that I said was like crystal clear to you and you're like, yeah, that makes total sense, maybe you need to start doing some more research for yourself. I have like, what, 600-700 videos at this point. Pretty much every concept that I just talked about for this question, I've made a video on, so make sure that you go check that out as well. Again, I hope you guys had a happy Thanksgiving. I'm about ready to go eat some more turkey, most likely. And as always, guys, I'll see you next week.